Well, Lucas, thanks very much for joining me here today. We're at Helium Beach House. We've got Afro House playing outside. We're in the podcast villa. I want to get your thoughts on the market real quick because it's been a pretty crazy couple months. What do you make of the recent price action? Like, where do you think we are in the cycle? Is there even a 4-year cycle anymore? Just curious from your, position in trading and research at Galaxy, like what your thoughts are recently.
Yeah, definitely. For me, like I go mostly by the philosophy, like nothing ever changes. And so I am willing to like adhere to the 4-year cycle for now.
Feels like it held up, right?
Yeah, it seems to. And obviously like price action in the past year has been tough too. But generally, like I think we're in this state because I'm trying to rationalize to myself, like why would that make sense? And I think we've had all these incredibly positive developments for crypto, regulatory front, access through ETFs. You got some of the largest companies launching chains. You got, DePIN companies that are getting huge partnerships. But I think that it takes a while for this stuff to actually now be like implemented and move to the next stage of adoption. And so for me, I think we've kind of like had all this positive developments and now we need a little bit of time for it to like almost marinate, for companies to adopt stable coins, to implement crypto rails. And then I'm hoping, over the next year or two, that starts to reflect more back into token prices and just general enthusiasm in the space. So very bullish and kind of excited about what's to come, but think we're kind of in this like weird middle phase now.
Yeah, I mean, especially this cycle, it seems like, or it feels like there's a couple crypto apps that have really taken off in terms of revenue generation, buybacks. DePIN's been iterating on that or trying to lead the charge toward that for a while. What have you seen change this cycle versus last cycle or even previously in terms of like fat protocol thesis versus thin protocol thesis, what apps are doing, where kind of like values accruing in the stack between like underlying infrastructure and then also apps?
I mean, I think you nailed it on the head. Like, I think there's been a real transition away from kind of the more speculative, narrative-driven trading towards like identifying real projects that have like staying power because they generate fees and revenue that will last for longer than just, during a speculative bubble. Which is definitely a positive for the space. As somebody who comes from like the NFT yield farming, meme coin, narrative trading background, I do miss those times. But it's definitely a positive for the space. And like I mostly focus on Solana. So just speaking from the Solana perspective, I think what we're seeing right now play out is this push towards internet capital markets is hugely positive in that it's kind of trying to condition the on-chain trading community on Solana to not only look for those speculative activities, but also start identifying like real businesses. And I think we've seen a few launch pads that are doing a good job of trying to figure out not only how you distribute tokens, but how you bring in companies that are doing more like, real business, have fundamental growth, can be valued. So I think longer term, it'll be super positive for the space. I think it'll help kind of avoid just all this like boom and bust that we see. And I think it'll make, not just kind of the crypto on-chain degen traders interested in getting involved.
For sure. And what are your thoughts on maybe like the DePIN sector, specifically on Solana, right? Solana's kind of been built as the home of DePIN. And I think that's pretty true, especially the last year or two, as you've seen a lot of DePIN protocols maybe even move over from other chains. But yeah, curious your thoughts on like the DePIN sector on Solana and then also what Helium's been up to lately.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I was first started covering Solana for Galaxy in like 2022, 2023, like one of the big talking points for why I thought Solana had a lot of potential was because you saw that the high performance of the chain enabled a lot of companies like Helium to move over. And I think since then, it's been actually really impressive to see the growth of the like DePIN companies that have shifted. So for a company like Helium, I mean, it's funny because like we were talking about with the revenue meta, it's like become such an important narrative and focus of the space, but it's almost like DePIN gets ignored for some reason, even though they were kind of the first movers in actually building those types of fundamental businesses. And I'm not exactly sure why. Like I think part of it is that these are pretty complicated business models. DePIN as a whole, I think, is a complicated concept. And so if you're not deeply ingrained in the space, it's tough to understand how it works. But like you look at what Helium is doing, they've got massive partnerships with, leading telecom companies, not just in the US, but globally. And in terms of like providing a service that is not reliant on speculation, like they provide cell phone coverage. So, I think, exactly.
Yeah,
I think like they're getting traction because there's demand for that and because they provide it in a cost effective way. And I think like looking at what they were doing in Mexico, which is, what I was looking at most recently, like they've succeeded there because they can build out the infrastructure a lot faster than what the companies there can do it. So, I think DePIN holds a lot of promise long term. I think it's just maybe a little bit difficult to explain to people not familiar, like why and how it actually operates to get them comfortable with it.
Yeah, we need a DePIN research report from you at Galaxy.
Yeah, for sure.
To explain it all.
Well, it's a good thing we got proof of coverage, right?
There we go. Yeah, no, 100%. On that note of maybe like once a protocol is generating revenue, but around like the transparency of like, is the lab entity taking the revenue, how much accrues to the token? What do you think are some of like the best practices you've seen, whether it's in DePIN or beyond, in terms of communicating clearly to token holders in the community about what's happening, where the revenue's going, that kind of thing?
I feel like we're still early in that process. I think like we're kind of at the stage where I think teams are just realizing that they need to maybe monthly or quarterly, like almost like a public company, like send out official updates and like keep people apprised, because the fact is, first off, like it's still tough to get all the data and information you need to like have a very transparent picture. And second off, like if you don't have that public communication from the team, there's so much noise in this space that can get lost. So, I think we're starting to see good efforts with that. I think there's been a lot of focus on like making like project revenue, what they're actually where the value accrues in the token, and then also kind of like how that value accrual mechanism works, a lot more transparent. And I think it's probably going to be necessary because the more companies that do it, the more others will have to adopt it in order to kind of attract the type of investment that they need.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I've loved seeing the progress on that front from the Helium team over the last maybe 6 months, from like, we're going to take Helium mobile subscriber revenue and buy tokens with it, but it's from the treasury first. And then it's like, we're going to buy on the open market manually. And now they're doing like automated buybacks. You can track through Jupiter, you can track like on chain that happen every day. And so now there's kind of like almost like a PE, multiple you can attribute to the project. And there's actually a lot more visibility and transparency into all that. So
yeah, 100%. And I think part of it also that we're trying to figure out is not just like how to report and be transparent about this stuff, but also like what is the best mechanism for doing it. And so, teams like Helium and there's actually a bunch right now are kind of, I think, going through that difficult process of like, all right, the token model has been broken for a long time. How do we fix it? We've got the regulatory clarity to some extent, and we've got the kind of attention and interest to make this work. So I think hopefully they do.
For sure, yeah. Last question for you is like, what are you looking to get out of Breakpoint this year?
I think for me, like Breakpoint every year is just probably the same as everyone, like a benchmark of where Solana is and how much it's grown from the previous year. And so I think for me coming into Breakpoint this year, like I actually just published a massive report on Solana like a month ago, so I'll show that right here.
Check
Please
it out.
read it. Yeah. But like the two big things for me, I think, is like one, there is a huge ongoing shift in like Solana's market microstructure. And because there's more validator clients and there's a lot more teams, that's very competitive in terms of like figuring out which teams get to implement it and how they get adoption. So I think watching that unfold is very interesting. And then I think the other thing is what we kind of touched on earlier, which is like this shift towards away from kind of like speculative meme driven activity towards much more kind of like real business and like fundamental growth driven activity. And so, I've already talked to a ton of teams focusing on that here. And I think for me, it's like next year is going to be a great evaluation of Solana's very much seems to have like the path set on what they want to achieve and how they're going to do it. And it's just a matter of, can they execute? Yeah.
Well, cool. Thanks for being here with me today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Appreciate it, man.
Nice.